around and make a cash grab. And yet we turn around and think, if they can put a face to the movement, they can blacken both its eyes. If they can hold its hand when the photo's planned, they can frame it how they like. If they fashion us some idol, then the limelight floods our sight, and they can pose beside the movement with a cardboard picket line. In a crowd of paper labor dolls with copy-pasted signs on a safely guarded soundstage of Bezos's design, where the fortunes of 500 CEOs have been divined, there now rise words that curse the movement's limbs for all of time. That for all its strength of labor, it will walk with withered step, and will wave a rusting saber as it heaves a labored breath, as it coughs through all the cancers born of Bezos's request, who'd prefer your starving neighbors locked in civil war for crumbs he left. But soon your cache of crumbs will mark your slums for violent theft from those who act directly on behalf of those with insufficient limb to lift their hoarder's heft. While landlords order mortars sworn to render borders torsos cleft. Now tune that down a quarter step. Ego, soul, and organ death. Any month that ends in embers, rot through every crop has crept. Nothing fit to eat, at least there's lots of J.P. Morgan reps. Now I remember when we lived on empty promises through every winter. Now the grapes of wrath are plump, and they are harvested directly out of Martha's vineyard, where the soil's awfully rich and all the fertilizer's even richer. My palate's not chromatically balanced. It's a cavalcade of crimson, and it paints a pulsing picture. It is gritty, and it's ugly. It is viscerally stunning, and it ain't fit for consumption like the water in your cistern. Now go and ring your congressman and tell that pig it's his turn. Poverty awaits, and there's a $7 wage for him to sit and watch his mansion full of shit burn. Although he won't be paid directly. He will soon receive an email that's supposed to have a link, but when it finally shows, it's empty. So he'll have to call support for confirmation that it's sent right, and then he'll get a shortcut to a poorly managed website where he'll submit a claim that must be notarized in person, all to finally be denied because he made too much the prior year to qualify for reimbursement. And now he knows the bitter taste of just a single day that all our retail workers face. He knows the kind of day our teachers have. The kind of day the janitors and lab technicians share with all the nursing staff. The kind of daily struggle that's a constant state of fear for all the working class. The white noise in their heads that's born of stress and turns to bursting glass. That constant thought, the other shoe's about to drop, the size of half a city block that wouldn't stop for you. You're just a worm to smash. You're just another massacre they'll call a clash. You're just a frozen passenger before the crash. You're just another Afghan holding frozen cash, assets all immobilized by Joseph Biden, king of ice, the self-professed iconoclast. Hosting dinner parties for his parasitic donors with some Donner party snacks that are nothing short of hearty if you've heart enough, or lack thereof, to call it that. But who'd have thought the meaning of the average person's life was to work and sweat and die to keep the Blackstone Holdings wallet fat? Or even worse, that some are turned to chum to serve as power bars for bureaucrats, psycho pomp and circumstance. Every time you sign your rights away, you'll earn rewards, and at 100,000 points, you can redeem them for your purpose back. And it's none the worse for wear, except a heavy coat of surface cracks. Courtesy of those who chose the path that dips its toes into the Jeffrey Epstein virgin bath. Courtesy of Congress and the Persian Gulf expansion pack. All our rations held for ransom, kept alive on honeyed words that slowed down all our actions till we're helpless when the ants attack, stripped to little ribbons and then scattered to the winds like the million little secrets the oppressor's shadow hand redacts. The million lives it stamped out in Iraq until its hands were black. Machinations sacrosanct and cancerous and flavor-packed. We've got just the black site for your whistleblower's Baker Act. It's somewhere in the weeds beyond the pines. Somewhere oddly Google somehow knows just how to find, 'cause it's right there in the file they've compiled all this time with the 7 trillion thoughts that ever came across your mind. And everything that ever turned you on or made you cry, Your truest, deepest fear and all the shame you sought to hide, those thoughts you dare not speak aloud lest they be weaponized, have been loaded in the chamber and they're aimed between your eyes. Meanwhile, in your cell at home, they confiscate your blinds. They'll say you waived your privacy. They'll show you where you signed. Now you don't control your thermostat. It's locked at 85, and you can't refuse the dermal graft that logs you into prime. You're just another wretch they'll come and fetch from out the vermin camp to mop some bloody floors and give a couple boots an oral shine. Oiled roots that move and writhe beneath a red-lined human tide, whose viscous sheen and toxic slime exists somewhere between a kind of Diet Coke and turpentine. The last of us are first in line. The curtain's up, we're streaming live with censored scripts and sponsored rights subject to changing overnight on Pepsi's whim or Pfizer's spite or Lockheed Martin's bomb supply or any time we need to breed some fear to get the stocks to rise. For those who need some distance wedged between their public image and the list of those who have visited the global child concubine. A client list that shall remain nameless, a client list at least a dozen pages, of honey-potted politicians ripened for the knife twist. Once you're dead, it's safe to say you don't present a flight risk. Once your lips are sealed for good, there's zero chance you might slip and spill the beans about your recent string of overnight trips, dropped from heights you can't achieve without a little nitrous, down beneath the roots of truth, tenuous and fibrous. The currency of youth would seem a tear above the Midas. Christ, I gagged a little as I wrote the currency of youth. I've yet to find the music that hath charm enough to soothe. My eyes are open wide, and I'm at terms with what I view, until I shut my eyes at night and see it too. In phantom limbs of reminiscence, twinging like a sickened witness, twisted in that spinal cringe, the traumatized revisit every minute, every statement picked to shreds before it's finished, all their dignity diminished, all their liberties relinquished, all your furnaces extinguished. All your means of warmth are flickering off into the distance. All the ways you know to make a living growing listless. All your savings spilled to fill a chalice meant for Pfizer, and they'll drink its vibrant ichor like they'll down a round of blood from out the last Sumatran tiger, and light a nice cigar for every man they left to die awaiting trial up in Rikers. Do a line of blow for every drug offender turned to lifer. Do another line for every hybrid judge and agent of the instrumental prison profit system that they've hired. They'll wear your movement like a mech they get to pilot, yelling hot labor summer through a microphone inside it. So all your eyes were elsewhere when the parties both collided and they formed a wave of fascism that somehow dwarfed their sum provided. A danger greater than its parts combined. A danger made the greater when the honest source is buried, but the narrative is wearing platinum labels saying trusted source that cover up its warning signs. Now, if you'd have told me all of this at 40 Sunday mornings, I would like to think I'd meet it without disbelief, but really might have struggled just to reckon with it, grappled just to ratify, and retched a little bit to glimpse these bigots that we've gratified. Just hit 1,400 words, and kid, I'm barely satisfied. I have hardly started carving bars from off this chunk of malachite I found and claimed and vandalized. And the rest is better left to settle one-on-one, just Gates and I. I'll desecrate his tesseract, I'll deconstruct his great design, and build upon the very spot on which it stood to touch the skies a statue in his image, wrapped in tapestry of tannerite, so Bill would get to see himself immortalized, then blown to bits in record time. Blown to scraps of bronze that he can touch and hold and recognize. Face to face and frozen side by side, immobile Gemini. This must be that self-reflection people had suggested that instinctively had always felt to you like being patronized. 'Cause if we talk, I'm talking down. If I speak, it's at my feet like you were 6 beneath the ground. I'll address you where you ought to be and not where you stand now. My gaze won't meet your eyes, much less your crown. My praise is not to bathe in, it's to drown. I bet you didn't know that you could overload an ego to the point of blacking out. And that's what it's about. If you can kill a man with kindness, you could smother him with clout. Reverse his engineering at the hands of hungry crowds, he who bought up all the farmland and is casing now the clouds. Police will be the farmhands paid to put us out to pastures that are shades of gray and brown, and I can hear those bastards fast approaching, screaming fills the town. An occupying army of abuser fascist clowns and some lachrymose millennials intent to vote them out. I laugh for those and pity those who vote with zero doubt, whose destinies as living ghosts they're all embracing, bowed. Now the cops are inching closer and they snuff out every sound, and all I had to do was shut my mouth. I'll let you guess the tragic end result of Jett, who tried his best but ultimately failed attempts to hold his tongue, who couldn't find the will existing anywhere within him to begin to douse the fire rising up inside his lungs, born of watching ignorant and educated shits press impressionable lips to boots that just inside a month or two will kick them from the bottom rung. Home is anywhere you lay your head once the oppressors hung. Soon we'll cleanse our memories of the songs that the oppressors sung. One by one, their words will turn to dirt that cannot hurt you, cannot infiltrate your movement, can't impress upon your sons. Can't convince your daughters they've no power of their own, no agency beyond the task of keeping up a home. When the last of all the lobbyists is laid beneath the loam, there will be no profit sown in fields of bone. We will only reap the sleep and stolen wages that we're owed, and commence the great unpaving of your quarter-mile driveways, terraforming tarmacs and industrial roads. Paranormal contracts dissipate to mist and disappear amidst the gloam. Disconnect the phone. Fist connects to stone. Somewhere in the thicket hums to life the buzz of crickets into one combining drone. But narrow down your vision and you'll see that every cricket is in fact a tiny drone, coming to inform you that you must proceed directly to your designated zone, or you'll be tased until you're prone, till you're pissing blood and whispering to no one in particular, just all of these particulates that occupy the air. They're the only occupants you share this giant coffin with. At least you win the arguments, 'cause they're too busy hogging all your oxygen to care. Hell, you're hardly cognizant. There's really nothing there. There's nothing close to conscious in your stare. Your eyes look like you're off in old Oahu, where you don't have any problems, where you haven't given thought to all the aquifers below you, full of fuel enough to launch you back to when you eyed Hawaii and Hawaiians told you not to. You see, a little like the Mayans, humankind will leave a lot to deconstruct from what we kept behind to represent our legacy. Less the stoic temples, less the gods resembled, less the carven lions standing watch above a vine-entangled mezzanine, more the arid soil, more the sea of oil, more the mark we leave behind is best exemplified by finding out Lake Mead is slightly caffeinated methamphetamine. Warped and shifted, torn and twisted, history revisited, the storm that buried Kennedy and swept the streets of Medellin stirs the strongest synchronized synthetic sleeper cell emotions center mound at Wrigley Field and harnesses that energy. We call that conditioning. They call it serenity. Those who crave obedience will swear they aren't your enemy, but live to see us orchestrated, moving like a centipede, full consent, submissive cadence, terms accepted, didn't peak, needs neglected, couldn't speak, speech affected, only leaded fruit to eat, only fracking gruel to drink. It's 2 for 1 on 40 weight at ExxonMobil Smoothie King. So I tried to do the movie thing. I walked away and flicked the match, but never heard the boom to match just boomer waves of Schumercrats. And humor's futile self-defense against such brutal facts that some will never hear the words before they see the acts, who have never heard protect and serve and checked behind their backs, and who trust in politicians kept alive on purely Duracells and Duramax. It's a little dash of ritual, a jug of pharma cocktail, a little splash of Burning Man and nursing class. So let this be the call that stirs the hearts of the emerging class that churns through the recession's dirt to rise reborn in Wall Street's ash. We must shake off the pedagogues and Pentecost the plutocrats, and there is no salvation without doing that. Now, In the name of clarity, the Pentecost that I invoke is just the part with flaming tongues and not the hope of Holy Host. It's mostly for the imagery of all these bloated, greedy folks who break our backs and snake our taxes treated like a weenie roast. And I'd take any bet that if we let our captors cook, you wouldn't see a bunch of struggling single parents show with worried looks like someone help, we needed those. If we don't have the plutocrats, then who will raise the interest on our student loans? If we don't have the plutocrats, then who will cut the staff to pay for bonuses for CEOs of senior homes? Without our noble plutocrats, then who would gut the budgets for anything providing education to the public? Who would neuter innovation that could benefit a nation because it wouldn't turn a profit, so it wasn't worth discussing? Without our precious plutocrats, then who will ensure that poverty took hold of our enlightenment and never let us see the sun or ever smell that rain was coming? No one's gonna stop, and if they did, they'd say the warmth is nice or God, the flames are stunning. 'Cause who would miss or pity all those monuments to nothing? Those who've witnessed cities turn to husks, the wealthy drained with but a touch to pave the way for a development that's easy money, that never seems to trickle down to someone hungry or anyone beyond their inner circle jerk of golfing buddies. And I'm not here for slinging mud. It's what you do. It's what you love. You're only pigs, so I don't give a shit if you're a little muddy. I need to see you destitute and see you struggling, desperate just to feed yourself a scrap of something, desperate to the point you take a bite of crow and know a taste that's truly humbling. We only can begin to tear the old foundation down once we confess that, yes, it's crumbling, and we all know it's crumbling. We can see collapse as plain as day on every corner, neath a veil of thin decorum, like a blueprint overlaid made by the Economic Forum. The plans they've drawn and quartered, the graves they're counting early, and the millions more backordered. I would rather take a stand than live and die by their accordance. I would rather see the forest once than corpses formed of brick and mortar. And if the band you're in starts playing censored tunes, then I'll see you on the dark side of the border. If you...
No, Indie Left, what is happening here?
To check out IndependentLeft.news.
The Indie News Network.
Indie Left News.
Oh, hey, Indie Left.
IndependentLeft.news. Great work.
Indie Left News.
IndependentLeft.news.
Independent Left News.
Shout out to Independent Left News. Shout out.
Oh, what's up, Independent Left?
Friend show.
Thank you, IndependentLeft.news.
The INN, Indie, you're wonderful.
I think Indie was onto something.
Independent News Network, Indie News.
Yeah. What's up, Indie, over on Rockfin?
Independent News Network, also known as INN.
Indie Left News.
I don't know if I would have made it through that 3 weeks without Indie, honestly.
No, I was just going to ask Indie.
A huge thank you and shout out to Indie Left.
No, you know what we're doing? We're world building, Indie.
Indie Left News.
You were doing the INN recruiting.
Indie News.
Independent Left News.
Shout out to Independent Left News.
Check out Independent Left News.
At Kennedy News.
I see Indie's in the chat. Hi, Indie! Okay, great.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Hi, everybody. It's Sunday night. So you know what that means? Time to do some stories. And then we're going to fuck up some boats. Actually, we're going to do some react and do some boats. Sure. This is Indie. That's Reef right there. This is How Do We Miss That? This is INN. I don't really hear Reef on his mic yet. He hasn't said anything.
That's because I haven't said things yet.
There he is. What's going on? What a week. You know, the last time Reef, by the way, Reef's back. Reef was out last week because his computer decided to take a dump. Anyway, he's back. Now, the last time Reef was here, we were actually talking about a hearing that was supposed to be coming up, an appeal hearing on July 9th and 10th. And we don't have to worry about that appeal hearing anymore, thankfully. Reef on the Bong Cam. That's correct, Sean. Welcome to the stream. Good to see everybody. Letting everybody kind of flow in for a couple of minutes. But and everybody here, I think already in chat knows that we don't have to worry about that hearing on July 9th and 10th because Julian Assange is now home, which is a sentence I never thought I would be saying on How Do We Miss That, especially not on June 30th of 2024. But here we are. It's not how we wanted it necessarily. It's definitely. Although we did want him home and playing with his children. But we had to sacrifice a tremendous amount to get it, and I'm not going to deny that. And we're going to talk about some of that tonight. But I brought a Kevin Gostola dissenter article with Mohammed El-Mazi that they wrote about exactly how it went down and what the process was. So I thought that would be interesting. Also tonight, we're going to talk about the dissident. I don't know how many of you guys even know about the dissident, but when we started INN, there were 16 of us, and a couple of them were Substack writers, including the dissident. Now, nobody has ever, including me, I've never seen or spoken to the dissident. Hilarious. I'm an Anon, and I've been terrible about being Anon because a lot of people have seen my face and several know my name. The dissident has been phenomenal about that, but has published some outstanding work and had basically taken off since, August of 2022? Almost 2 years on hiatus?
Something like that.
And seeing Julian Assange freed brought him back. And I'm so excited, and we're going to bring one of the articles that he wrote up this week to commemorate that. Also want to talk about, I don't know if you guys know, there's a British journalist, activist by the name of David Miller. I think he's also a professor. And he's very pro-Palestine. He's written a lot of stuff about that. He wrote a piece for Al Mayadeen about the Sayanim, which are the Mossad's helpers. And basically they're the agents or the people who have been co-opted or controlled and act on behalf of the Mossad and act as the veil. We're going to get into that tonight. I'm kind of psyched about that. I also brought a story later on about the Stanford Internet Observatory that I don't know if we're going to necessarily get a chance to get to tonight, but I did want to bring that. But the first story tonight was a real fun one. Did I fuck up again? Oh, I'm so sorry. Hang on. No, we're here. Okay. So let's get into it. Damn. Wait, before we do, we have an updated supporter board. And thank you so much to everybody. Specifically this week, Kathy Lloyd, Marika Voss, Jacqueline Jack. Kathy Lloyd surprised the hell out of me on Saturday morning. I woke up to a wonderful donation, support, from her, and wow, awesome. Thank you to everyone that's on that board, that shares, supports. Like this stream if you haven't already, please, wherever you're watching. Subscribe, share. They say don't tell you to do all three things because you're only going to do one of them. So just do one of those three things. I don't care which one. Like, share, or subscribe. Do all three. That'd be even better. Fred Edwards, the sharer. Other people like, other people shared. Okay, cool. And I think everybody here is subscribed. But yes, thank you for supporting the network, everyone. Thank you, Angel. Angel did Pro Wrestling Talk last night with Miss Witchy Perfect. Friday night he does Angel in the afternoon. And Thursday night, he was on this coverage that we were involved with for the debate. I then decided to cover the debate. Mm-hmm. And we're going to start with this post from Saga, who none of us likes. He's a worm. But Breaking Points petitioned specifically CNN to ask if they can get access direct to the feed, and they were denied. So this starts out, this whole story. Now, the story that I'm going to tell is that independent media, corporate media has been trying to lock independent media out and tried to take the debate and the conversation around the debate and control that narrative 100%. The way that they did this was by trying to scare independent creators into not covering the event live or even showing footage from the event because of copyright threats. And this is what happened. So Monday morning, Saga posts up that CNN has told Breaking Points that it is not allowing independent media channels to stream their presidential debate despite granting permission to all other terrestrial news organizations, a blatant protection racket to protect elite media. Garbage. All right? Garbage on CNN's part. He says, we'll be streaming for our premium subscribers, so you got to pay to play. This is a genuinely outrageous attack on independent media. That started already a conversation that was already happening. Now, our friend Sabby Sab says, if it's on YouTube, it should be fair use. And that was really the argument that we are making in our case as well. Other people said that they heard that if you showed the CNN stream in full without blocking it or pausing it to interrupt anything to comment, that was okay. At some point, so there was an internal discussion clearly over at INN about this, but before, we spent a lot of time talking about this. So first thing is, Sabby says, from what I just heard, since CNN owns the exclusive rights, we may not be able to do Rumble either. Could be a lawsuit. And then CNN was threatening Tim Pool. Okay. Now, then what? Natalie Lee, who's friend of the show, friend of the network. I thought people couldn't stream it on YouTube, but I do see that PBD's podcast is streaming it as well. How did that happen? All right. He must have they had to get permission from CNN was my response, because otherwise he's taking a big risk. And I thought I was told that YouTube would be doing takedown requests and honoring them live if they caught anyone live streaming the debate.
What's up with that? What's up with that?
What's up with that? And there was a lot of internal then discussion about what to do at INN. So Politically Homeless was Thursday night at 9. They were planning on live streaming and commenting on the debate. And once we saw this thing about CNN and YouTube, we were like, all right, well, we don't want to risk our YouTube channel over this. We don't even know how many people are going to watch in the first place, watch us watching it. So certainly over whatever it was, we weren't really thinking it was worth the risk. But we came up with a couple of ideas, and we decided to take the risk and stream it over to Rockfin, Rumble, and Twitter. And take our chances. We figure if they're going to come after a network, it's not going to be one as small as ours. We immediately made the stream unavailable, and if you have the link, you can watch it, but it's not. You can't see it on the channel right now on Rumble. On Rumble, it's up on Rockfin. But on YouTube and Facebook, we made a decision to do something different, and I'll show you that later on. Now, Twitter decided, per Patrick Webb, Elon Musk will not comply with CNN's attempts at DMCA takedowns of Twitter content posted on the platform of the presidential debate. And a lot of people were celebrating that, and we decided to take advantage of that and stream there. So we were one of many that were streaming and reacting and commenting there. There was a presidential candidate that stood next to a screen that acted like he was part of the debate. That was the saddest thing I've ever seen. It looked like an 8-year-old who was running for class president against nobody but a video. It was really okay. Anyway,
Dude, you're trying to be mayor of Kid City, bro.
Well, it sure. So it worked in a way. Care Bear, Colin Radix Carter of INN, tweets out publicly in the afternoon once we saw that thing about Sagar. Hey, Rumble, since YouTube and CNN are monopolizing the presidential debate against independent political commentators, is your platform available for content creators to stream and commentate on the debate without an issue? Well, I thought that was a pretty important question myself, and I think inquiring minds did want to know, so I tagged some of the people at Rumble that I was talking about, that I know, and Chris, who's the CEO, and Rick, who is the head of product, and this guy, who is the head he is the head of market, like a marketing guy over there, and then Rumble themselves. No response from them, as usual. There. I did end up getting a response from them, but publicly, we start the following morning. Chris says, tomorrow Rumble Cloud and Rumble Video are going to be running hot. I don't know what that means, and you have to interpret that for whatever you thought it to mean. But he says the debate could trigger a seismic shift in live streaming. So that kind of told us that we have a green light, but it didn't really tell us, right?
Mm-hmm.
The evening of the debate, 15 minutes or, an hour before it's supposed to start, Chris tweets out that I bet that everyone would much prefer a debate on Rumble than CNN, with independent creators asking the questions and not corporate media. Corporate media does not represent the people. All right? So he essentially, and I did have a conversation that afternoon with somebody over at Rumble who said that, look, we're not taking an official position. Our copyright rules are what they are. If we get a copyright takedown request, we're going to go through our legal process, and we're going to give you the ability as a streamer to appeal it first before honoring the takedown, or take it down yourself. But of course, that's not going to happen until well after the stream's over, so there's not much we can do. Okay. So that kind of told us that Rumble is giving us a green light without giving us a green light. So we're like, all right, so I guess we're going to stream it to Rumble, and we're going to stream it to Twitter. So what happened come debate night? Well, 8:30 comes. We hit the go live button, and Rumble is no bueno. They're crashing. Their servers are overloaded. And what they said is, that afternoon, due to the potential of significant demand and chatter around many streamers looking to use Rumble tonight, we just did an emergency upgrade to give additional live streaming capacity. Now, what they did not say is that it was during the debate. What they could have said, and this is what they're going to say in court, is, oh, we staffed up and we plan on people, commenting after or before the debate, but we figured it was going to be a big day. So we didn't specifically tell people whether to or not to, and that's where they're just going to claim no responsibility and let CNN go after who they want to go after. That's my opinion on how this is all going to go down. If CNN decides to pursue prosecution or pursue any kind of legal remedies after anyone that co-streamed the debate in the end, if they can find it. All right. So big thanks to YouTube for making this possible the last couple of years. Another big middle finger to YouTube from Rumble. And that was really nice of Chris and Rumble officially to say so. Now, as soon as the debate was over at 9:30, all right, Rumble tweets out, felt like the entire internet decided to come to Rumble all at once. It knocked us down for a few, but we're back up. They were back up long before 9:30. It was probably about the debate started at 9 and went until 10:30. So that first half hour, they were kind of meh. All right. And then they were up and solid and strong. But of course, that first half hour was really critical. And the hour and the half hour before that, it was a real hour that it was basically, as Reef called it, a DDoS. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That it was a denial of service, some kind of denial of service attack by some kind of third party. I wonder where that could have potentially come from. Right? And then there were feeds empty, and then it took a while to restore the feeds back, and it was a whole thing. Right? But meanwhile, INN was still live on Rockfin, and we were able to give people a link, say go there. Now, what happened? Rumble smashes viewership records, and during the Trump-Biden debate, the platform hit live over 700,000 peak viewers. Major streamers like Douche Bongino and Steven Clam Chowder led the way with peak viewerships of 223K and 192K respectively per streams charts. Okay, so think of that what you will, but they are looking, across a playing field of everybody's channels on YouTube, on Rumble, on Kick, on Twitch, and they're giving you what's actually reading live off the APIs. So we've all talked about Rumbers to begin with. Where's Nick Fuentes? He was in the top 4 also. Fuentes went live, and apparently he had a ton of views as well. Again, Anna Mayer says, thank God for Rockfin. And yes, Rockfin was up and solid the whole time. All right. Again, Natalie Lee reminding people that if you did want to watch the debate, hit this because Locals and Rumble was down for some reason. Come to see our stream on Rockfin, which is you can still watch. By the way, we don't gatekeep our streams on Rockfin. Although Rockfin would like us to make some premium content that is exclusive to subscribers, and they are encouraging us to do that. Because that's part of what makes the stream go. Thank you. So like I said, we had to make a decision about what to do at INN that night. For Rockfin, for Rumble, we were going to do Rumble and Twitter and Rockfin. But when it came to YouTube and when it came to Facebook, we didn't want to get our channels taken down due to copyright. Aha. Reef had to plug in.
No, just doing that in general.
We didn't want to have to get our channels taken down because of copyright. We've had copyright stuff in the past. We're trying to get clear so that we can actually get remonetized and be good little soldiers for a little bit. And so what we decided
supposedly don't have any problems with that now. So
well, they say that we can do products, but they're still not remonetizing us. I still think some of our content is problematic for them, but anyway, what we decided to do in the end... They're not
telling us anything either way. So
no, they're not giving us any guidance. But what we did was do this.
Who are these people?
Wait, what is this?
Who are these people?
On the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen.
So we ran Jesse Jett
can't
music
be the only one weighing the pros
with
of
QR codes, telling people
I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment.
Watch us on platforms that aren't garbage, and put up QR codes.
You think we'd go?
And this is backwards from 5 in case you didn't know. But love Jesse. Love to Jesse. If you're not subscribed and supporting Jesse Jett, what are you doing with your life? Please do. JesseJett.bandcamp.com. But further, what happened? 73.1 million viewers watched the first presidential debate of 2020 between Trump and Biden, according to Nielsen. Right? The ratings from Thursday night's debate reflect a 35% drop in audience from 2020. And how is that? Well, the shitlibs are huffing copium. Oh my God, fewer people watched it. And so they're happy that fewer people saw Biden, except when you add in the more than 30 million live starts on CNN's digital platforms and YouTube, add that to the 47.9, you're right there at 77.9 million viewers. So
of fucking idiots wanting to watch a WWE match with a political spin. But, that's just me.
Yes.
Like,
Yep. So, in 2012, 67 million people watched on TV, but only 3 million online. So you still have seen this slight uptick in increase when you combine the online and TV viewing audiences. You're just seeing a massive shift to YouTube and live streaming, mostly because of pandemic. Right. Well, and then, you know, everything was virtual. All the debates. I don't even remember the 2020 debate between Trump and Biden. Honestly, I really don't.
You can do it, baby.
Yep. And Anna Mears loves you, Reef. Well, a lot of us do.
I love you so much.
So, speaking of which, you know, I'm not going to give my play-by-play a recap of what happened because I didn't really choose to watch the shit show. Though we did have 4 people covering it. Yeti and Angel joined Himbo and Crab on Politically Homeless. And people said their coverage was hilarious. And it was a... Vince McMahon made that Trump character, I swear. I don't know about that because... Well, maybe Trump. Because Biden was definitely not up to WWE standards. And I think the WWE would have put it on a much more entertaining production than what CNN did. Considering the whole... Right? Considering the whole thing was basically scripted anyway, and that they had mute buttons and nonsense, right? But our friend Laura Kay over at Normal Island News, go subscribe to her over on the Substack, normalisland.co.uk. Americans confirm Joe Biden and Donald Trump are the very best they've got. They are the 2 finest individuals.
Clap for that.
Well, yes, they are the 2 finest individuals out of 1/3 of a billion people. Now, she is the greatest satirist of UK, and I will give her that title. The greatest nation on earth has confirmed 2 grouchy old men who took the stage in a televised battle to be the figurehead of the Uniparty for the next 4 years are easily the 2 most capable individuals in a country of 332 million.
None of the above.
Yes. It was the greatest rematch of all time, like another Ali versus Foreman or Kurt versus Tong Po, as the men wore hand wraps dipped in broken glass and adult diapers, sponsored by APAC, of course. The pair exchanged brutal blows throughout the debate, but unquestionably the biggest challenge they faced was reading from an auto cue because they couldn't hold their eyes open, and neither could anyone else. These 2 prime specimens, whose rugged athleticism is matched only by their fierce intellects, are clearly the only choices to run the most powerful war machine the world has ever seen, which is why none of the other candidates were allowed onto the stage. Just imagine if Jill Stein or Booby were allowed to talk about how corporations have completely fucked Americans over, and nothing ever changes, no matter
They
which...
wouldn't.
Well, no, Jill Stein might, no matter which wing of the Uniparty is in charge. Americans might start realizing there are alternatives that don't involve BlackRock and Vanguard owning everything, including their souls. Democracy is when the establishment decides when 2 identical candidates you're allowed to choose from, and they will only narrow it down to the very best, of course. This is why nothing ever goes wrong when the U.S. elects a president. Obviously, I want everyone to love me, so I would like to clarify that I love Donald Trump and Joe Biden as much as their donors do. I'm a real people pleaser, and I'm confident that no matter who Americans choose, the 1% will continue to thrive. The candidates...
Said it before, and I'll say it again.
What?
Democracy simply doesn't work.
Thank you. The candidates...
I don't know why that bugged out
the
for
other
a
half.
second.
I was like, huh? Okay. Thank you for that's Kent Brockman reporting?
I don't remember. It was Simpsons gag, I think.
Yes. The candidates, who are coincidentally funded by the same people, have dramatically different visions that include doing everything exactly the same and knowing they won't live long enough to see the consequences. If you couldn't be bothered to watch the debate because you're normal, here are the key policy differences. Trump acts like the climate crisis doesn't exist, whereas Biden pretends he's doing something about it. Trump would take away abortion rights, whereas Biden would use abortion as a fundraising tool. Trump says he would go harder on genocide, whereas Biden pretends he is pushing for peace. Trump grabs him by the pussy, whereas Biden sniffs hair and digitally penetrates people. Both men prefer to talk about their golf swings and agree corporate greed is the fault of refugees at the border. The Republicans feel they have a real statesman now because they finally taught their man to stop farting and picking his nose in public. Sometimes. This means Trump is the underwhelming favorite to win, and this is hugely exciting given what a roaring success he was last time, at least for the late-night comedy scene.
Bad news, bad things are happening.
The Democrats were so enthused by their guy's performance, they were left asking, is it too late to replace him? But it was hardly Joe Biden's fault they scheduled the debate during nap time. Sadly, the Democrats have decided it's too late to replace Biden because Michelle Obama couldn't be too arsed to stand, and no one wants Hillary Clinton, so their strategy is to call you ageist if you point out sleepy, creepy, handsy genocide Uncle Joe is not fit to run a convenience store, let alone a country. If you don't vote Biden, you hate old people, you bastard.
Why do people think Michelle is going to be the next? Like, I see no indication of, I mean, other than she's a name people know.
And that she has a likability rating that's insanely high, and that she is somebody that basically,
right.
That she's shit-lived heaven to them.
Yeah, but never have governed, never like
served office. We don't even know what her policies are. Her own personal ones. We know what her husband's were, and they were pretty friggin' atrocious. Yeah. They sounded good, but in practice they were garbage, beyond garbage. But like Laura wants to finish, whoever wins in November, I'm more confident they can take the world several steps closer to destruction by signing bills that energy companies and arms manufacturers put on their desk and pretending this counts as leadership. God bless America. Love you, Laura. She's great. Woo! Yeah. And here we go again. Yeah. So McAfee predicted it. I don't. McAfee thing was 2020, not 2024. And go ahead.
I also don't like McAfee's not. He's okay. He made some stuff. He also, liked a lot of weird shit. So, and particularly very fond of El Drogas. But what do I know? Like. Not want to talk, but I wouldn't trust exactly what he tells you every day.
Yes, Jacqueline, that's
sure.
Her. Normal Island News. That's Laura Kuenssberg, translator. That's right. She's outstanding. Love her to death. Rick Solis is here. We got a lot of great.
You are. Thank you.
We got a lot of great people in chat. Jeff Thomas Black is here. Good to see you, Jeff. Go Star! Woohoo! Namaste, as he likes to say. Cheers to me, he heard it himself.
I don't know, I just want to end that segment with shame on you for anyone wanting to engage with those debates. Shame on you. You shouldn't have done that. You have to stop engaging with things that you don't like that will be upsetting. It's what they want you to do. They want the ratings. You have to not engage. And that goes for so many things.
Well,
that I know a lot of you still engage with. There's enough nails in those coffins. We don't need to expose that crap. Everyone knows already. We can move on.
Well,
ignore them.
There was a bit of a funny. I mean, dude, when there's a cell phone like this, Rocky wasn't the most eloquent in speech, but he was a fighter. His character conveyed eloquence. Our message. Biden's character is his eloquence. Dude, can you punch yourself in the dick any harder?
Anyone?
Right. Esha says, the fictional character you're comparing Joe Biden to from bad Cold War propaganda film was brain damaged.
Yeah.
Like, are you fucking kidding me? Thank you. No, I've never heard anybody say that before. And yeah, that was my only reaction to that was just, oh my God. That's just kicking yourself in the dick really hard. I just, what was that? Really?
Here's your sign.
Here is your sign. So yeah, it's been a hell of a week. Grains of salt. McAfee was a
3
crazy
days
person.
since you looked at me.
Yes, McAfee was a crazy person. He was married. There's a lot of stuff about him. I would look him up. Very interesting character. Very flamboyant, flagrant, interesting character. You know, he had the
if you thought the Tiger King was bad.
Yeah, he had the antivirus program. He was living in when he died.
Yeah.
Heidi Benner, Rogue Conman has to keep his stock portfolio up to date. Yes, well, it's his wife's stock portfolio. You have to be careful. My God. How did we get here? Cynic is here.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness.
You know why.
What?
That marmot fucked everything up. You know why. You know what happened.
Wait a minute. Does Cynic have Jesse Jett in the house right now? Is Jesse Jett like watching us live through Cynic's computer? Is that what's happening?
It's possible.
Oh my God. Jesse Jett, we love you if you're listening. Richie did not do an interview with Rokana's wife. No. All right. David Miller, Professor David Miller, and I believe he's at Cambridge or one of the British universities. And I'm sure the bio at the bottom will say which university that is. Oh, he just left a little while ago. Okay. All right. Mossad and its network of little helpers, the Sayanim. And I've heard this term referred to, but I really didn't know much about it. So I wanted to bring it. I didn't know if anybody else had either, but I'm sure you see a familiar face up there or two. He says the Mossad have been exposed as targeting the International Criminal Court, including directly threatening its personnel and their families. What else do they get up to? All right. Zionist intelligence agencies launched a war on the International Criminal Court in January 2015. This was when it was confirmed. Yep, that was done under Obama. This was when it was confirmed that Palestine would join the court after it was recognized as a state by the UN General Assembly. Israel's intelligence agencies routinely surveilled the ICC's current chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, his predecessor, Fatou Bensouda, and dozens of other ICC and UN officials. Israeli intelligence also monitored materials that the Palestinian Authority submitted to the prosecutor's office and surveilled employees at 4 Palestinian human rights organizations whose submissions are central to the probe. Who holds them accountable? Multiple agencies, including the Mossad, Shin Bet, and the quote-unquote National Security Council were involved in addition to the occupation military, the IOF. Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs under Gilad Erdan was involved in the surveilling of Palestinian human rights organizations that were submitting reports to the ICC. None of this is okay. It's reported that, quote, a large whiteboard in an Israeli intelligence department contained the names of about 60
A whiteboard?
60 people under
Is it that Congresswoman's whiteboard?
No, it's not. It is not. That's Katie Porter, and her whiteboard is like tiny and the size of her dome, maybe. This is like this is more like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Charlie connecting the stuff with the red string whiteboard.
Gotcha.
Right. A large whiteboard. Okay. Half of them Palestinians and half from other countries, including UN officials and ICC personnel. So they drew up, they thought they were the cops. Mossad, the foreign intelligence agency of the Zionist colony, was involved in attempting to recruit senior ICC officials. The former head of the Mossad, Yossi Cohen, allegedly threatened the chief prosecutor of the ICC in a series of secret meetings in which he tried to pressure her into abandoning a war crimes investigation. This is true. You can not want it to be, but this happened. Cohen's covert contacts with the ICC's then prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, took place in the period leading up to her decision to open a formal investigation into alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity in Palestine. Cohen is alleged to have told her, quote, "You should help us and let us take care of you. You don't want to be getting into things that could compromise your security or that of your family." Be ashamed.
We've investigated ourselves.
Be ashamed of something.
And we
happened
found we've done nothing wrong.
Be ashamed if something happened to him.
Mossad
also took a keen interest in Bensouda's family members and obtained transcripts of secret recordings of her husband. How do they know that?
Good question.
Regime officials then attempted to use the material to discredit the prosecutor. Cohen met with Bensouda on a number of occasions, including ambushing her during a meeting with Joseph Kabila, the then president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. It appears he was a Mossad agent of influence.
Of course he was.
Mossad also targeted Bensouda's successor, the current chief prosecutor, Karim Khan. The ICC confirmed there had been several forms of threats and communications that could be viewed as attempts to unduly influence its activities, unquote. And that's probably to understate it at best, and much worse. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is said to have taken a keen interest in the operation. No surprise there, even sending intelligence teams instructions and areas of interest regarding their monitoring of ICC officials. One source...
He's French fried when he should have pizzaed.
You're going to have a bad time. Yes. One source stressed that Netanyahu was obsessed with finding out what materials the ICC was receiving. Dude, just go to fucking Twitter.
Pretty easy, right?
We were seeing it every day. So, like I said, this article is about the Sayanim. What are the Sayanim? Mossad has carried out a wide range of operations all over the world. They've involved deception, theft, extortion, blackmail, torture, assassinations, and even false flag bombings.
False flag bombing. Maybe people should Google some stuff. Maybe they should Google it.
Maybe.
Something Levon, right?
Something like that. The role of the Mossad is often overlooked when the role of the so-called Israel lobby is discussed, but it is an integral part of the strategy of the Zionist movement. Yeah, they're the smartest intelligence service on the planet, much smarter than the fucking CIA. And here's a few examples. They created a fake terror group in Lebanon, the FLLF, and used it to claim credit for a series of bombings of civilian targets, killing hundreds. Reef Breland has documented this in detail. In Egypt, in 1954, early on, and we know when Israel was created, or whatever you want to call it, the UN allowed it to begin existing, but 6 years later, the Mossad bombed Egyptian and Western-owned civilian targets in an attempt to blame Muslims or the left. We've heard about many of these things happening in a lot of Muslim countries to try to drive the Jews to Israel. Secretive intelligence agency Native created a vast international campaign claiming Soviet Jewry faced a new red anti-Semitism. The real objective was the demographic imperative to recruit settler colonialists. No surprise. They gotta find a different word other than Jewry. That does not that sounds like a slur. Yeah, but what do I know? But it says a book titled "The New Red Anti-Semitism: A Symposium." top of Native.
It's just a Nadav.
Nativ.
They would always call him native.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? But, a book called The New Red Anti-Semitism, a symposium, was part of that campaign, published in 1953 by Commentary, the flagship neoconservative journal published by a Zionist group, the American Jewish Committee. Many British Zionists worked directly with Nativ. They included the academic Colin Schindler and Mike Wine of the Board of Deputies, who was their first full-time Soviet Jewry officer. Remember, this is written from a British perspective. David is a British professor. So we're getting names and stuff that we're not usually familiar with in the States. But later, he was an aide of the convicted fraudster Gerald Ronson in the Community Security Trust, or the CST. This is connecting a whole lot of dots across the pond, showing that this was a global effort and that there was just as much propaganda pushed out and operations in the UK and everywhere else around the world, as David will continue, that Wine also cooperated in a Mossad operation when the agency was in global charge of attempting to institutionalize the idea that anti-Semitism was Judeo-phobic, a process that ended with the creation of the so-called working definition of quote-unquote anti-Semitism. Forgetting that Palestinians are also Semites and Arabs are also Semites. They just tried to carve that inconvenient fact out and ignore it.
Yep.
Mossad effectively kidnapped hundreds of Jewish kids in Morocco to recruit further settlers. Wow, I never heard that story. It owed its success in part to the fact that Mossad had previously set up the Moroccan intelligence services, and they were consequently penetrated by Zionists. Mossad's David Littman...
We talked about them doing this. Mm-hmm. We talked about doing this in Lebanon, too, and Syria.
Yep.
Right, where it's like they'll set up coffee shops and fund whole things for youth people to show up. You know, it's similar to the Iran thing, right? Where, you know, suddenly there's this color revolution, you know?
Right.
Like, that's what they're trying to push for. That ends up, you know, usually installing some NATO, you know, dictator. So,
right. But yeah, Mossad's David Littman and his wife Giselle ran the op. David even wrote a book about the op code named Operation Mural. Wow. His wife Giselle is better known as arch-Islamophobe Bat Ye'or. She popularized the racist... Right? She popularized the racist theory of Eurabia. Whatever the fuck that is.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Oh, it sounds exactly like what you think it should be, so...
Oh my god. Mossad used a honey trap and...
Get rid of all the brown folks and replace it with Europans.
Yeah. Mossad used the honey trap in 1986 to lure Mordecai Vanunu, the heroic nuclear whistleblower from the UK to Italy.
Say that 5 times fast.
Mordecai Vanunu? It's fun to say.
That's right. Vanunu?
All right.
Vanumi.
So they could kidnap him, and he's still not free, by the way, because the UK doesn't have a due process law like we do. They could indefinitely keep people in jail like we just learned and saw for 1901 days. Mossad also assassinated famous Palestinian cartoonist and activist Naji al-Ali, whose most famous creation was widely known the widely known character Handala on the streets of West London in 1987. Margaret Thatcher expelled a Mossad operative who was the handler of the assassination, Ari Regev, as a result. And normally, the British Prime Minister doesn't expel a diplomat for no reason. They probably had pretty good evidence.
Diplomatic immunity.
Diplomatic immunity. That makes me think of Lethal Weapon 2, like instantly, just hearing those two
yes.
words.
Yeah, I know, dude. Need to put it on the soundboard, but yeah.
Mossad used British, French, and Irish passports to fly a team of assassins to Dubai in 2010 to torture and kill a Palestinian leader. Foreign Secretary David Miliband expelled a Mossad officer as a result. And then we've got intelligence operative Shai Massot was famously filmed in 2017 bragging about his intent to take down UK Conservative Minister Alan Duncan. So these are just a handful of examples of Mossad operations in the UK. Mossad officers referred to as Katzas operate with the aid of a worldwide network of helpers called Sayanim. Even the ADL admits that the Sayanim exist. Rebecca Fetterman, an anti-Semitism analyst at the ADL, says, quote, "There is a system of Sayanim. That's a reality. There are people who help Israeli intelligence assets around the world," unquote. Yeah, we know. Former Mossad operative Victor Ostrovsky has claimed that there are several thousand Sayanim in the UK alone. Perhaps the most famous Sayan was the media tycoon Robert Maxwell, might have heard of him, who worked for Mossad for years and was buried with full state honors.
We've certainly heard of his offspring.
Yes, well, we're going to talk about them. But Robert Maxwell worked for the Mossad for years and was buried with full state honors on the Mount of Olives, which is Jabal al-Zayatun. Observers might be forgiven for thinking the whole Maxwell family has been Mossad adjacent, given the role of many of his 9 children. His sons, Ian and Kevin Maxwell, have set up a very spooky-looking, relentlessly Zionist yet obscure think tank in London, the Combating Jihadist Terrorism and Extremism, the COJIT. Son of a bitch! Yep. Isabel, writes Alan MacLeod, Indie Media Award honoree. Another of the 9 Maxwell siblings was described by investigative journalist Whitney Webb, another Indie Media Award honoree.
That's where I figured we were going.
As Israel's backdoor into Silicon Valley, Israel used Robert's connections to strike deals with some of the tech world's biggest players, including Microsoft co-founders Bill Gates and Paul Allen. Now, if you read and listen to Whitney, Isabel and Bill Gates were a thing for a while. She told Israeli newspaper Haaretz that she saw her work in tech as an opportunity to continue her father's commitment to the country, unquote. In 2001, Isabel vowed to work on only things involving Israel. In a more overtly political move, she also accepted a position as the governor of the Shimon Peres Center for Peace, because everything is upside down. There's anything wrong with that. Everything is upside down when it comes to intel. Remember, black is white. They come up with the most fucking ghastly names for this shit. Another daughter, of course. Yes. Another daughter, Ghislaine, of course, worked very closely with Jeffrey Epstein in his compromat gathering and sex trafficking operation, allegedly, widely regarded as run on behalf of the Mossad. And Les Wexner, who may or may not be a Sayanim or a Sayan or a runner. But make no mistake, the Mossad is active today in the UK and elsewhere. Bill Ackman, anyone? Aiming to subvert democracy and ensure that the political culture of the West is wholly colonized by Zionists or their little helpers. As it says here, the opinions mentioned in this article do not necessarily reflect the opinion of Al-Mayadeen, though they probably do, but rather express the opinion of its writer exclusively. David Miller is an investigative researcher, broadcaster, and academic. He is the founder and co-director of the lobbying watchdog Spinwatch and the editor of powerbase.info. He can be found on Twitter at tracking_power. David Miller has been on with... Who are these people? David Miller's been on with Misty when she had her TNT radio show. He's been all over the place. But that's a good question. Why isn't mine working? Come on. Gonna get it 3 times at some point. Damn it, Stream Deck reconnecting. Garbage. Okay.
My man.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. My man. Now
we'll do it live.
Now all my Stream Decks are crashing. Oh no! There we go. Thought everything was dying. Okay. David Miller, good piece.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
That's what my Stream Deck is saying right now, for sure. At least the ones on the iPad. It's boo. I say boo this man.
Who are these people?
Man.
Thank you. That's what I was waiting for. So, you heard that, right?
Where's that at?
Jimmy?
No. Is it under? Where was? Okay. How long does it take me? Comedians.
Okay. Well.
Who are these people?
Well, in the meantime, we'll just say hi, Nancy, or fuck you, Nancy. So yes, why did Mr. Epstein hang himself? Who knows? Allegedly, with a paper T-shirt. Yes, you know how the man who invented chess died? Did he fall out a window? I don't know. Mouse, is that you? Is that your picture over there, or is that someone else? I think that's someone else. Didn't Maxwell unalive himself in a boat accident? That is correct. Robert Maxwell did unalive himself, or did get unalived in a boat accident. I don't know if he drowned. I believe he drowned. Yeah. It's been that's Fetterman, not Uncle Festerman. Very funny. Very funny.
Move this man!
That's how long it took me.
Damn. Jeff Thomas Black saying that I keep thinking of the film Munich over on the Rockfin. Rockfin.com/IND Left News. INN's Rockfin channel is busted right now. I'm working closely with the people over at Rockfin. Wow, look at that Stream Deck. Very nice. Kind of looks like mine a little bit.
Look at this. Okay, so it was in insults. But then it was over here. Boo this man.
Move this man!
I first had to go to Chappelle. I had to go to movies. I was like, where did I store this? Where did I put this at?
So Jeff, yes, Munich. That you're right. And Abner, dude, that's a great movie, by the way. You know that it's obviously propaganda, but it at least like portrayed, you know, the French. I don't know. I actually really like that one. Shoot me. I don't know if I watched it now, I probably would feel differently. Well,
you asked me to shoot you?
Maybe.
It's high noon.
Right? Behind the scenes in the Reefer Mothership. That's right. You got to see behind the scenes. Yes, he does have quite the cockpit.
People don't even see the other ones over here.
Right? I've got two Stream Deck 32s and two of those iPads that look like his that are filled up.
Y'all have no idea. Like
I'll
give people a look. See, look.
Here.
We've got those Stream Decks there. We have this many monitors, and then the soundboard over there.
Another
Don't mind all the messy stuff.
Yes, another iPad Stream Deck.
A wild man. I'm sorry.
Yep. It's quite the cockpit. Is right. Anyway,
it's ridiculous.
Yes, we sit here all day and we play with tech toys. That's what we do.
What it takes.
So somebody's gonna clip that. All right.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier an INN co-founder that many of you may not know is a guy by the name of The Dissident. He's on Twitter by leftist_news12, which is as generic as it gets. He was hanging out with us in the Discords when we formed INN, and he was publishing, and he has his own Substack called the307.substack.com. And we were all kind of friends. And when we signed up, when we were starting INN, the whole idea was we wanted to have journalists who wrote exclusive articles, which then we would be able to cover on our shows, and we would have unique content that nobody else was really talking about. And in that spirit, like I said earlier, The Dissident was very active between November 2021, when we first formed, and August of 2022. He actually had written the article that has the most views on INN Stack ever, which is an article about Hassan Piker that was published just around or before the General Strike Summit in 2021. Well, talking about how he shits on actual activists and how he's a Gucci socialist, effectively. But months, a long
cares.
a long time before you guys had covered, but
Priest.
He also had written about. He also had written. Come on, Chris.
What are you doing, Chris?
So he also had written about Russia and Ukraine, and after about 6 months of seeing all the propaganda, he'd written about Bellingcat a couple times. I think we'd cover a couple of his Bellingcat articles exposing them. He decided that he just didn't have a taste for it anymore and hung it up and said, I'm gonna go do some other shit. I'll see you guys. Like, all right. And
safety is number one priority.
Yes, and I stayed in touch, and every once in a while I'd be like, hey, so you think about writing? We're around. We're still doing, just, hey, network's still here. How you doing? Just, that's what I do. I stay in touch with people. And sure enough, this week he says, Julian Assange being freed got me out of my funk, and I'm here to, and I got some things to say again. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do it. So his first piece was writing about Julian being freed, and I also wrote a piece. I think a lot of people have covered Julian being freed already this week. So I'm not just going to cover the straight dope about that. There's plenty of places to go, and most people have already heard it. So the other piece that the dissident wrote was, what pissed him off was that in Canada, the Globe and Mail is one of the papers of record there, and that there are 6 lies he caught in a hit piece that they had done on Julian Assange. And this is the bullet points that are published at the end of the article we're going to read, but I figured we'd start with the bullet points, which is that Julian Assange never called himself a whistleblower and has always referred to himself as a publisher and a journalist, of course. All right. That WikiLeaks published the full version of the Collateral Murder in video in 2010, along with short version. There wasn't only a short version published. There is no evidence that Roger Stone had any connection directly or indirectly with WikiLeaks during the 2016 election, because this person is clearly believing what was in the Steele dossier. That the DNC and Podesta emails contained impactful stories that led to resignations at the DNC and CNN. Clearly they did, because Debbie Wasserman Schultz ended up resigning as the head of the DNC, if I remember correctly.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Assange has denied his source for the DNC emails was Russia, because we all kind of know that it was Seth Rich, even though he can't admit it and his family doesn't really want that to be. And Roger Stone was convicted of obstruction of congressional investigation, making false statements to Congress, and witness tampering, not for any connection to WikiLeaks during the 2016 election. So he wants to start by making these clarifications. And again, the dissident at the 307.substack.com published this article the other day that the Globe and Mail
coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
Yeah, this is where all the best journalists are, from Laura Kay over at Normal Island News to a guy named Indy over at Indie Media Today, and Ricky over at Council of State Media, and Kit Clarenberg, and yeah, Rachel coming to a Substack near you soon. I've been predicting that for a while. Hell, Betty Hassan already did. But what he says is, again, that the Globe and Mail runs an error-filled smear piece on Julian. Canada's paper of record ran a smear piece filled with factual errors and debunked Russiagate conspiracy theories. So we know where they stand.
Looks like we got ourselves a reader.
So we've got, we know where Canada stands. That the Canadian newspaper, the Globe and Mail, recently ran a giant smear piece on Julian Assange entitled, Julian Assange was never a journalist or whistleblower, but their right to free him, written by journalist Doug Saunders. The piece was not only a gross attack on a journalist who's exposed war crimes and corruption around the world, but was filled with major factual errors and journalistic malpractice. Which is funny considering that he's writing it about WikiLeaks, who's never gotten a story wrong or had to print a retraction. Though they did make a deal to pull the DNC emails off as part of the plea deal, and I will concede that.
Not her damn emails.
I'm tired of talking about your damn emails. Well, we shouldn't have stopped talking about her damn emails.
Ugh.
Right?
Yeah.
Below is a list of the false claims, right? So here's the false claim one. Julian calls himself a whistleblower. Saunders starts the article by saying that Julian is a fraud who called himself a journalist and a whistleblower while greatly hindering and inconveniencing the cause of journalism and making life much harder for actual whistleblowers, unquote. The first error here is the claim that Assange calls himself a whistleblower. Assange has made clear that he is a publisher and a journalist and not a whistleblower. The Reporters Without Borders article, RSF, dispels common misconceptions in the case against Julian Assange, responds to the claim that Julian Assange is a whistleblower by saying, quote, Assange played a different role to that of a whistleblower. He did not leak classified information himself, but he published information that was leaked to him. Pretty simple, and pretty pathetic that the Globe and Mail couldn't get that right. False claim number 2 was that the collateral murder video put out by WikiLeaks was deceptively edited. In the article, Saunders writes, quote, WikiLeaks first came to mass public attention in the spring of 2010 when it published what it claimed to be an exclusive leak of a U.S. military video of a 2007 incident in which helicopters opened fire on a number of people, including civilians in Baghdad. The video, he says, edited to remove much of its context, bullshit, was posted on a WikiLeaks site called Collateral Murder and promoted as a world exclusive, unquote. A basic Google search for the Collateral Murder video on WikiLeaks debunks this claim, as the page shows the 17-minute short version of the Collateral Murder video with the full unedited 39-minute video published right below it. Right? Yep. Both videos have been available on WikiLeaks since they published the story, as corroborated by a 2010 New York Times article that states, quote, WikiLeaks made public a 38-minute video of the helicopter attack as well as a 17-minute edited version that it called Collateral Murder. More smears from corporate media. Next, false claim number 3 was that WikiLeaks corroborated with the Trump campaign about the 2016 DNC leaks. And we still hear this one a lot. In the article, Saunders writes and regurgitates the propaganda that the Mueller investigation into the Russian interference found that the GRU had provided the hacked emails to WikiLeaks, which then communicated with Donald Trump's campaign and made them aware of the hacks, often in advance of their release, unquote. While it is true that the Mueller report accuses Assange of getting the DNC emails from Russia, subsequent reporting has raised from Russia, comma, there should be a comma there, subsequent reporting has raised serious questions around this narrative. Journalist Aaron Mate reported the holes in the timeline of the Mueller report.
Russian scum!
Of the Mueller report accusations in a Real Clear Investigations piece. In the article, Mate points out that the Mueller report accused WikiLeaks of receiving the DNC emails from the alleged GRU-run accounts DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0. The problem with this narrative...
They said Aaron Mate yelled at me.
Oh, Aaron Mate.
Oh, Aaron Mate.
Yes, that guy.
You done messed up, Aaron!
The problem with is that the Mueller report alleges that Assange's first contact with these accounts took place on June 14th, but Assange had already announced that he had information on the DNC on June 12th. As of course Mate put in the article, if Assange's first contact with DC Leaks came on June 14th and with Guccifer 2.0 on June 22nd, then what was Assange talking about on June 12th? Is it possible that Assange heard from another supposed Russian source before then? Maybe, but if so, Mueller doesn't know it. Instead, the report offers the implausible scenario that their first contact came after Assange's announcement. So basically, he announced it, bluffing, hoping that he might get it. Yeah, that does not sound very plausible. Furthermore, a 2017 testimony from CrowdStrike CEO Sean Henry called into question the claim that Russia even hacked the DNC. As the aforementioned Aaron Mate reported in a separate Real Clear Investigations article, Sean Henry, the CEO of CrowdStrike, the cybersecurity firm that first accused Russia of stealing the DNC emails, admitted that they have no concrete evidence that it even happened. I'm going to repeat that line because that sounds vaguely important. CrowdStrike, the cybersecurity firm that first accused Russia of stealing the DNC emails, admitted that they have no concrete evidence that it even happened. We just made the whole thing up.
Yep.
Saunders claimed that WikiLeaks, quote, communicated with Donald Trump's campaign and made them aware of the hacks, often in advance of their release, is likely referring to the theory that Roger Stone was communicating with or had a back channel with WikiLeaks during the 2016 election. This claim is provably...
Let me call the Russians to help.
Yeah, I don't think so. This claim is provably false. The only proven communication between Stone and WikiLeaks during the 2016 election consists of WikiLeaks telling Stone to stop making false claims of association. We appreciate that, however, the false claims of association are being used by the Democrats to undermine the impact of our publications. Don't go there if you don't want us to correct you. And of course, Roger Stone is a douchebag and says the more you correct me, the more people think you're lying. Your operation leaks like a sieve. You need to figure out who your friends are. And then after the election, happy we are now more free to communicate. Okay.
Ugh.
While Stone attempted to establish a connection to WikiLeaks through the liberal comedian Randy Credico and the conservative conspiracy theorist Jerome Corsi, there is no evidence that either of them had any contact with WikiLeaks or Assange during the 2016 election. For Credico, his only contact with Assange was a public interview with Assange on his radio show on October 25th of 2016. They did not speak again until April 11th of 2017. In the case of Jerome Corsi, the Washington Post article, quote, inside the special counsel's long hunt to uncover whether the Trump campaign conspired with Russia, what a title, reported that despite extensive investigation into it, the Mueller investigation could find no contact between Corsi and WikiLeaks or Assange.
Number one Russian hacker.
Right? So, again, nothing, no direct connections, and they couldn't. And now, I know that they were also refused all kinds of stuff that they tried to subpoena and get their hands on to try to see and get the complete picture, and they weren't provided the complete picture because they weren't entitled to it. They got what they could get legally. False claim number 4 was that the DNC emails contained nothing incriminating. The Nothing Burger. In the article, Doug Saunders of the Globe and Mail, as we were saying, this smear artist, this propagandist, this Russiagator, writes that, quote, the emails contain nothing incriminating or even especially embarrassing about the Democrats, unquote. This claim is just baffling.
Because Putin's a madman.
Bye, Jamal. Peace out, bro. I don't know what you're going to be doing next. Maybe he'll get a job on TYT. Maybe Cenk Uygur will hire him for an Angry Man show. Maybe he'll need someone to pull the fire alarm. The BBC article, 18 Revelations from WikiLeaks Hacked Clinton Emails, lists multiple scandals revealed through emails, including Clinton saying she would secretly intervene in Syria, saying she's had private and public positions, that Clinton was fed a CNN debate question ahead of time by Donna Brazile, and expressing support for open trade and open borders. The Wrap article, 7 Most Shocking Revelations in Hacked DNC Emails Released by WikiLeaks, lists some of the big scandals revealed by the DNC emails. The emails revealed that the DNC was secretly plotting against Bernie Sanders despite pretending to be neutral publicly. This includes pitching stories about the Sanders campaign being an unorganized mess, attempting to use Sanders' religious beliefs to turn voters against him, and reducing polling locations in pro-Sanders areas, among other things.
Pokemon go to the polls.
These scandals were so impactful that they caused Debbie Wasserman Schultz to resign from her position as DNC chairwoman, and they caused CNN to cut ties with Donna Brazile, who I mentioned earlier. But no, they had nothing especially embarrassing or incriminating. I mean, those Podesta emails were brutal. False Claim 5 is that Assange said that his source for the DNC was probably Russian. We know this is by far the worst part of the article and one of the worst cases of journalistic malpractice I've ever seen, again from the dissident. In the article, Saunders claims, though he later denied it, Mr. Assange said at the time that he believed the leaks were probably coming to him from Moscow. On the online version of the Globe and Mail, this passage links to an article on The Hill titled Assange, Some Leaks May Have Been Russian, and the article states, quote, on Sean Hannity's radio show, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange said that hacked Democratic documents sent to reporters at Gawker and The Hill may have come from Russia, but he said he is confident the emails he received did not come from the same source. Unquote. Quoth Julian Nevermore. This is clearly concerning.
I thought it was the Raven.
Well, one or the other. 601, right?
I'm confused. Yeah, same thing.
This is clearly concerning, as Saunders is claiming Assange admitted the leaks he was receiving were coming from Russia by linking to an article that quotes Assange fully rejecting the idea that his source was connected to Russia.
Russia.
Because he knows nobody's going to click the link. While up until this point, the article has been filled with factual errors, this is by far the most egregious. Saunders is attributing a fake quote to Assange while linking to an article that quotes him correctly, saying the exact opposite of what Saunders claimed he said. The only plausible explanations for this major error are that the Globe and Mail do not fact-check articles before publishing, and or they are okay with publishing articles that contain blatant lies and misrepresentation. Dissident's a good writer and he does his homework.
Who wrote this? Who wrote this lie?
And then finally, of course, the false claim about Roger Stone going to prison for his connection to WikiLeaks, which we know is not the reason. In the article, again, propagandist moron Saunders claims, in the end, quote, Mr. Trump's agent Roger Stone went to prison for using WikiLeaks to interfere with the election, unquote. This is like saying that Assange was in jail because of the 2016 DNC emails. It's dumb and uninformed and shows how fucking stupid you are and not everybody else. Nowhere does the conviction mention anything to do with a connection between Stone and WikiLeaks during the 2016 election. This claim is also evidence-free as shown above. Okay, that from the U.S. Attorney's Office official press release, right? Is that yes, U.S. Attorney's Office, Stone was found guilty of obstruction on a congressional investigation, meaning he wouldn't turn over his phone and stuff to be surveilled illegally, 5 counts of making false statements to Congress, and tampering with a witness. But nothing to do with corroborating with WikiLeaks. The Globe and Mail has written multiple articles concerned about misinformation and disinformation. If they are seriously concerned with misinformation, they would issue the following corrections to this article. And that's what I showed earlier. So, I definitely would recommend The Dissident. because he's an INN founding member. So everyone give him a subscription. Everyone go follow him over at Twitter at leftist_news12. And that's what his thing looks like, which is more confusing because it says leftists news with an S, but his handle is leftist without an S _news 12, which I don't know why 12, but okay, good for you, man.
330.
The 307.substack.com is their Substack. So go check them out. Oh, God. Support independent media like the 307 and INN. You can do that over on Cash App. You can do that on Patreon. You can do that on PayPal. You can do that on Rumble. We prefer you do it on Cash App because that puts cash in our hands right away. There's that QR code that you see up on screen during the show too. You can use that to scan, and that will go to our PayPal or to our Ko-fi, and you can buy us a cup of coffee for $5, and that also goes into the Jesse PC Fund. Correct. Thank you. So, going back to this wide two-shot, everybody, that was Assange article number 1 that I had, and Gucci for 2.0 is CIA. Well, maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. But I think that Gucci for 2.0 was an American. I will say that. Love that Key and Peele's. Yes, Jacqueline. Hey, Ron.
Hey, Ron.
Love that. You done fucked up, hey, Ron.
You done fucked up, hey, Ron.
That's great. Hey, Gregor, it's good to see you. That was nice. Thank you. Everybody join Nilio Nostrum, our friend Mikhail. Be affectionate to that like button. Give it a little massage. A little. Yeah. Chicka bow wow. Chicka bow wow. So anyone who doesn't know, Stev Gill is ghost starred over on the Rumblaze. So I guess he just decided to come over and hang with fam over here. Anna is still over on Rockfin, but she went and did some stuff. But I know she's going over to she's going to go to that Third Eye Carnival. For those who don't know, look that up, check that out. I believe that's happening next week or the week after, and that's a bunch of independents getting together and talking about some shit in a way that people don't usually talk about shit. So I think that's kind of cool. So I have one more story. Actually, technically I got 2 more stories, but I still don't know if I'm going to get to that last one about Stanford Internet Observatory. Right? But we've got Indie Media Award honorees in the house again. Let's switch to this view. I like this view better. The Dissenter, Kevin Gosztola and Mohammed Almazi, the 2 of them together, were a tag team, especially in 2024. Mohammed being on site at the Royal Courts of Justice in London. Justice. Hilarious.
The halls of injustice.
Right. Later at the halls of injustice. Meanwhile. So they have been on the inside and speaking with the family and reporting from inside the courthouse. And they've done an amazing job when it comes to the center. And Kevin's been all over the place this week being interviewed.
Yeah.
And you know, we have been covering basically since episode 1. I was putting in that ticker, free Julian Assange. We've been saying free Julian Assange, and we've been fighting to see Julian freed, and we got to see that this week. And it was an amazing sight. I put together a Substack article this week. We talked about it on INN News, and for those who, and I think everyone has, but for 15 seconds, it's worth it. To see him sign the paperwork and watch him get on the plane.
June,
was something to see. And I don't think any of us were, well, I know none of us were expecting it. And it kind of broke Saturday, on Monday night at 7:00. And like everything kind of stopped. And then we were just following a plane being tracked around the globe and watching him get in and out of a car and stand in front of a judge. Well, we heard he stood in front of a judge and we heard him say a couple of lines and they said, you can go free. And, how the hell did that happen when everybody's been fighting and screaming and everything else? Well, they decided to publish what they at least have learned from all that they have experienced and gathered as their version of the story. And yes, bad cookies, I am so glad, Reade. This is what we fought for. And shout out to Misty. Woo! And shout out to all of the activists and the people who stood out there with banners in the rain and umbrellas and who protested and with megaphones outside Merrick Garland's house, who gave speeches outside the Justice Department and all over the country. So many people to thank, but what we want to do, and we've done that a lot already, but what we want to do tonight is talk about the inside.
Thank you very much.
The inside the plea deal and find out why the government abruptly ended the case. And that's what we couldn't all figure out. What's the why? Why the motivation for the U.S. government now? Now, I think that part of it had to do... Why? Before we start this, I think that part of it had to do with the fact that they had lost the appeal, that Julian had won the right to appeal. And that they did not want a lot of the stuff coming out during an appeal hearing that would potentially come out.
Especially when it involves people not getting the First Amendment. Like, I think that was a big part of that. That whole appeal hearing.
Oh, no.
And it puts British extradition in place. So, but...
Weird. Restream lost connection for a second. Okay, it's back. All right. So inside the Assange plea deal, why the U.S. government abruptly ended the case, according to these guys and what they had heard. U.S. prosecutors brushed aside calls to end the case against the WikiLeaks founder until a British appeals court granted a hearing on the First Amendment. And that's basically what they're trying to say. And this was made possible by paid subscribers of The Dissenter. Become a paid sub with this special offer and support independent journalism on press freedom. I am a paid annual subscriber to The Dissenter. I have been for 3 years. Well, first it was Shadowproof, but I've since Kevin broke off of Shadowproof and started The Dissenter. I have been an annual for $50 a year paid subscriber. Big fan. He's one of the best. He's one of the best writers there is when it comes to the Assange story. So, but this is him and Mohammed. Mostly this is Mohammed writing, and Mohammed's been on with Torah, and you can look up that interview on The Politics of Survival. But for 5 years, the U.S. Justice Department defied calls from around the world to drop Espionage Act charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Prosecutors even faced pressure from the Australian government, which demanded that a close ally end the case and return one of their citizens to his home country, yet prosecutors remained committed to putting him on trial. That all changed in May after the British High Court of Justice granted Assange an extradition appeal hearing on the question of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The Justice Department re-engaged, quote-unquote, Assange's legal team and participated in very intense negotiations for a plea deal. U.S. prosecutors accepted a guilty plea to one conspiracy charge under the Espionage Act with no additional prison sentence. The plea deal did not contain a gag order, which is also very important, and officials agreed to Assange's request to avoid travel to the continental U.S. He was released on bail from Belmarsh Prison and flew on a charter flight to a courthouse in a U.S. territory in the Pacific Ocean known as the Northern Mariana Islands.
Where?
I
Y'all don't know where that shit's at.
Well, Saipan, I believe it's
That's
actually
made up
like
place.
an offshoot, like an island off of Japan. That another imperialist island that we just decided to annex, I guess.
Yeah.
How the hell does that happen?
Yeah, it's part of that Pacific Theater.
More importantly, the Justice Department
took it and kept it.
Right, during World War II, I would guess. But more importantly, the Justice Department pledged not to pursue any future charges for any uncharged conduct that Assange allegedly committed prior to his guilty plea. That also is important. It wipes his slate clean. This abrupt shift brought a conclusion to a 14-year-long legal saga on June 26th. The award-winning journalist had spent a little more than 5 years detained at Belmarsh Prison, which is often referred to as Britain's Guantanamo. Judge Ramona Manglona accepted the plea deal and sentenced Assange to time served. Quote, "I do hope that there will be, in fact, some peace restored," Manglona remarked. Quote, "I'll just note, too, that this past week the island has been celebrating 80 years of peace since the Battle of Saipan. This was a very bloody place between the Japanese and the Americans. The people have been celebrating the fact that we've been celebrating peace here with the former enemy. And now there is some peace that you need to restore to yourself when you walk out and you pursue your life as a free man." Before ending the proceeding, Manglona added, "Mr. Assange, apparently it's an early happy birthday to you, as his birthday we know is July 3rd, so happy birthday, Julian. And it's probably the first one that you'll have outside of a prison or any type of limitation." A press conference was held by Stella and Assange's legal team in Canberra. Assange landed in Australia. Let's watch the video of that here.
Stella!
Somewhere here.
Sorry, Jeremy, I need to interrupt you. We now have live feeds, basically, of Julian stepping out of the plane in Canberra.
Oh, please, let's see it.
Oh, it's such a...
Well done,
he's walking on the tarmac. I don't know, he's waving to the crowd. It's such a joyous moment. I'm not sure you can see it, but believe me, this is such an emotional moment. He is looking so great.
I saw pictures of him. He looked a lot better than last time I saw him.
Well, if you think that I have maybe backtracked a few years, I can tell you that he is. Mm-hmm. He's looking a lot better than inside Belmarsh Prison on Saturday. It's such a great moment. He's clenching his fists and waving to the crowd. What a great moment in history to witness and be a part of it, Jeremy. And thank you. I mean, we should all be.
I'm just getting it on my phone now. Wow.
He is meeting Stella now. Oh my God. Kissing Stella, this is, my God. And John Shipton is there, his father, reuniting with the family. What a great moment, Jeremy, to be watching this.
Julie,
this is,
come here!
Something we've been fighting for, waiting for. Absolutely fantastic. It is. It's, oh my God, it's hard not to be emotional under these circumstances, Jeremy. I hope you appreciate that.
Absolutely.
It's been something we've been waiting for a very long time.
Oh, that's amazing.
Isn't it? My God.
Can't wait to hear his voice. So great to see his face. There's Stella's post. But go ahead.
We did get to hear from in the courtroom. I don't know if you brought that too, but
I didn't, but
we have heard that.
The U.S. came back to the table after the appeal hearing was granted. We found this out. Justice Department prosecutors were not truly motivated to come to a plea agreement with Assange until weeks ago, like we said, after the High Court granted him the right to appeal. Quoted, were a protracted process that went on for several months, sort of in fits and starts, says Barry Pollock, and that's his Australian lawyer. We were not close to any sort of a resolution until a few weeks ago when the Department of Justice re-engaged, and there have been very intense negotiations over the past few weeks. This point was also emphasized by Stella, who said it was important to recognize that Julian's release and the breakthrough in negotiations came at a time where there had been a breakthrough in the legal case in the UK. The High Court had allowed permission to appeal. Like we said, there was a court date set for the 9th and 10th of July in which Julian would be able to raise the First Amendment argument at the High Court. Well, wait a minute. At least his legal team would. He probably would not, because he has not been able to attend a hearing of his since October of 2021. Even remotely.
It's still fucking weird.
How is it that he was too unwell to attend, even remotely, the appeal hearing in May, on May 20th, the decision, yet that guy didn't seem unwell whatsoever. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, Assange was granted the right to appeal in his extradition on the basis that it was at least arguable that he would be prejudiced at trial by reason of his nationality and citizenship. The UK Extradition Act of 2003 prohibits extradition to a country where a person may be prejudiced at trial by reason of their nationality. Wow, the clown show of the year, Assistant U.S. Attorney Gordon Kromberg, a lead prosecutor on the case, told the courts that the U.S. government might argue during trial proceedings that Assange was not protected by the First Amendment. I didn't even know that was possible, but guess what? Foreigners don't get First Amendment protection automatically. They have to petition and be granted permission. Insane. Kromberg made a formal sworn declaration on behalf of the respondent and in support of the extradition request. He put himself forward as able to provide authoritative assistance as to the application of the First Amendment. It can be fairly assumed that he would not have said that the prosecution could argue that foreign nationals are not entitled to the protections under the First Amendment, unless that was a tenable argument that the prosecution was entitled to deploy with a real prospect of success, unquote. All right, so that is also important because, he was going to, all right, he made a sworn declaration that they were not going to automatically grant him First Amendment protections. And that's a problem. He didn't get the ability to have free speech.
Yeah.
If such an argument,
he said he can bring it up,
right, to petition for it, but
that's all
it wasn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
But if such an argument were to succeed, it would at least arguably cause the applicant prejudice on the grounds of his non-U.S. citizenship, and hence on the grounds of his nationality, the court added. The U.S. government deployed their hubristic argument about Assange and the First Amendment as part of their defense of the extradition request, and it backfired. Now also, and they don't even mention any of this, to me it was the death penalty thing that was just as big a deal as the whole First Amendment question. British law says that if there is the possibility that he could potentially even be charged in the future with a death penalty charge, they cannot send him. And that was also part of the appeal. Marjorie Cohn, who's the dean of the People's Academy of International Law and former president of the National Lawyers Guild, asserted, "It is no coincidence that the plea came a little more than a month after the High Court of England and Wales ruled that Assange could appeal the extradition order against him. The Justice Department apparently feared it would lose the appeal." Now, somebody else would say that it is the Royal Courts of London and that this is not England or Wales or Great Britain, but London is a separate entity in itself that has its own set of laws. The City of London is where he was imprisoned.
Yeah.
That is who has the rights to HMP Belmarsh, apparently. It's very weird legal shit. Stella said she believed the negotiations revealed how uncomfortable the U.S. government is, in fact, with having these arguments aired, which of course they are, because they don't want to have them clarified in court. They'd rather have it be vague and open to their interpretation as often as they like. The fact that this case is an attack on journalism, it's an attack on the public's right to know, and it should never have been brought, she concluded. Julian should never have spent a single day in prison, but today we celebrate because today Julian is free. It almost sounds like Passover. Once we were slaves in Egypt and now we are free. Because that's what we used to do every year. Anyway, the U.S. agreeing not to pursue further charges, of course. One of the most incredible revelations regarding Assange's plea deal is that the U.S. government agreed that they would not bring any other charges against Julian for any conduct, any publications, any news gathering, anything at all that occurred prior to the time of the plea. This is of particular note because, as Pollack explained, even if Assange succeeded in his appeal against extradition, that success would have just resolved this case.
Yeah.
The 18-count indictment against Assange focused almost exclusively on the WikiLeaks publisher's role in obtaining, possessing, and publishing documents between 2009 and 2011, known as the Iraq War Logs, Afghanistan War Diaries, Guantanamo Bay detainee files, and diplomatic Cablegate. One diplomatic charge under the Computer Fraud and Abuse by prosecutors to include a speech that Assange gave to a room of computer specialists during which he encouraged people to provide WikiLeaks with information which was in the public interest. On top of the fact that their whistleblower witness was a convicted pedophile and admitted that he lied. Oh yeah, there's that too. However, Assange was never charged for WikiLeaks' role in publishing emails belonging to the DNC, acts which even former FBI Director Robert Mueller concluded were likely protected by the First Amendment. However, if he didn't have any First Amendment protections, nor was Assange, most importantly, ever charged for WikiLeaks' 2017 expose detailing the CIA's expansive cyber warfare arsenal known as the Vault 7 materials. This, to me, is the crux. The leak and the publication of the files led Mike Pompeo, when he was CIA director, to reportedly obsess over targeting, kidnapping, or killing Assange in revenge. He had him deemed a terrorist. He had WikiLeaks deemed a non-hostile state actor, which allowed them to break every U.S. law to pursue him and align with Mossad, allegedly, the Adelson family, allegedly, to spy on Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy using UC Global, the security company that the Ecuadorian embassy had hired to oversee security at the building. We know that from the David Morales trial that's happening and happened in Spain. With the plea agreement, which is there in PDF form, which the dissenter reviewed, the U.S. government cannot ever bring a case against Assange for other acts of journalism.
Hey, look at that. $20 dono from the Accord Lord.
Woo!
They never stop being you. Isn't that nice?
Thank you, Sean. Much, much appreciated. Love you all.
Yes,
the United States agrees not to bring any additional charges against the defendant based on the conduct that occurred prior to the time of this plea agreement. The plea agreement states, unless defendant breaches this plea agreement. Judge Manglona said, I was quite surprised, but I think it's a very generous statement. She noted that it applied to everything for the past 14 years, and that's very broad. Another key position that Assange's legal team took during the negotiations was that any resolution would have to end this matter, according to Pollack, meaning that Julian would be free and that he was not going to do any additional time in prison. He wasn't going to do any time under supervision, and he wasn't going to do any time under a gag order. And if that's the case, we'd love to hear him speak. So, of course, here's the political lobbying behind the scenes. Jennifer Robinson, who is, her law firm, by the way, is also part of the George Clooney White Helmets, the Clooney Foundation of Justice, which supports the white helmets and regime change and is highly problematic. I got big issues with her and her firm. But Australian human rights attorney Jennifer Robinson, who represented Assange in the UK, further described the strong political dimension to the case. Extensive lobbying efforts by members of the Australian government proved crucial to the overall result. The way I know this is bullshit is Robinson thanked her close personal friend, her close personal friend and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for doing fucking nothing but his principled leadership, statesmanship, and diplomacy for tepidly once in a meeting with Joe Biden, maybe could you maybe think about possibly helpfully defended. She explained that raising opposition to Assange's extradition at the highest levels of the U.S. government completely changed the situation for Julian and enabled our negotiations with the U.S. government that allowed us to reach this outcome. It also shows that Scott Morrison was a complete fucking piece of shit, and every other prime minister prior to Albo was also a complete fucking piece of shit. There were about 3 decent members of parliament in Australia. Andrew Wilkie is the one that I remember the most. There were a couple others that were mentioned today on Slow News Day, but not very many stood up for Julian, their own citizen. Ambassador to the U.S. and a former Australian Prime Minister himself, as well as Stephen Smith, who is Australia's High Commissioner to the UK and the consular staff in London. Smith accompanied Assange on his flight from London to Saipan, because somebody from the Five Eyes was not going to let their eyes off of him, of course, until he actually went through his plea. He explained that Rudd's relentless efforts in Washington, working together closely with us, with myself and my co-counsel Barry Pollock, completely changed our relationship with the U.S. and completely changed the negotiations. Bullshit. Without his efforts and his adept diplomacy, we would not be in this position we are today, and Julian would not be home. Yeah, also, journalism would still not be a crime officially, but that's another story.
Sounded like you had like a throat thing happen.
Bullshit. What?
Hope you're all right.
Speaking to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation on June 27th, of course, they get the exclusive first interview. Robinson explained that once Ambassador Rudd was sent to Washington, D.C., the U.S. Department of Justice finally started to deal with the defense team in a meaningful way. That opened up conversations for us with the Department of Justice that we were trying to have and were not getting responses, and so things moved. What the fuck took you so long, assholes? Is all I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
And that is counter to what Kevin is reporting. If Jen is saying that it was the ambassador coming over and talking to the Justice Department, but Kevin's saying that it was because of what the High Court ruling says, which is it? As many people, including Stella, argued over the past few years, this was a politically motivated prosecution. No, it was a persecution, and therefore it stood to reason that that it would be political pressure, which would ultimately resolve the case. The lobbying efforts of high-ranking Australian politicians and government officials would not have occurred without the intense lobbying of everyday members of the public, activists, and press freedom and human rights organizations, the latter of which were brought on board as a result of intensive upward pressure. Again, I'm going to stop there and repeat that sentence because that also is more than vaguely important. The lobbying efforts of high-ranking Australian politicians and government officials, fuck them, would not have occurred without the intense lobbying of everyday members of the public, that's you guys, activists, that's also you guys, and press freedom and human rights organizations. Sometimes they fell on their faces too, like the CPJ and Reporters Without Borders and the Freedom of the Press Foundation, that all acted like they were in Julian's quarter, but certainly fell on their faces more often than not.
Yeah, plenty of those can fuck right off.
A number of years ago, there were only a few political figures in the UK and Australia who were willing to be to be open and clear in their opposition to Assange's extradition. For example, people such as then Labour MP for Derby North, Chris Williamson, and George Galloway, who was recently re-elected to Parliament, as well as Australia's independent MP for Clark, Tasmania, Andrew Wilkie, and the Conservative politician George Christensen, at the time a member of the House of Representatives with the National Liberal Party for Dawson, Queensland. It took millions of people, Stella says,
Queensland,
working behind the scenes, people protesting on the streets for days and weeks and months and years. Very cliche. But here's the part, one of the parts that hurt. Assange was required to instruct WikiLeaks to destroy all unpublished files. And this is one of the things that we had to sacrifice and had to give up. This was not a total 100% spike the football win with no consequences. Before Assange's guilty plea was entered in court, the agreement with the U.S. government required him to take all action within his control to cause the return of the U.S. to the U.S. or the destruction of any such unpublished information in his possession, custody, or that of WikiLeaks or any affiliate of WikiLeaks, unquote. Now, my guess is that he doesn't have it, but if he did, he'd have to destroy it.
Yeah.
Barry Pollock confirmed that Assange has instructed Kristen Hernassen to destroy any materials they might have had that were not published. WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Kristen Hernassen confirmed to the dissenter that Assange had requested that he destroy all published U.S. secret document, all unpublished U.S. secret document. We just got crashed. This provision in the plea agreement echoed the infamous decision by 2013 editors at the Guardian newspaper to take a power drill and an angle grinder to a hard drive, which contained copies of vast troves of information leaked by National Security Agency whistleblower Edward Snowden and to then Guardian columnist Glenn Greenwald.
Okay.
Editors were then threatened with legal action if they did not either hand over the hard drives. They agreed to destroy them in the basement of their headquarters in London, even though it was understood that copies existed elsewhere outside of the UK. Technicians from Government Communications Headquarters, the UK equivalent of the NSA, filmed the destruction of the computer hard drive while taking notes and providing instructions to the editors. Guardian editor Paul Johnson was among those who described the destruction as purely symbolic act, since everyone involved knew that there were copies of the materials which revealed the details of Anglo-American mass warrantless spying and surveillance of hundreds of millions of people in the U.S. and around the world. Yet the act was more than symbolic. It was a potent reminder of the power of the UK government, acting with the encouragement of the U.S. national security state, and its ability to threaten and bend even well-known and even well-resourced establishment news media to its will. As investigative journalist Kit Clarenberg recounted, another Indie Media Award honoree, recounted for The Dissenter, 3 years after the destruction of the hard drive, the Guardian's investigative team was dissolved and Guardian coverage of military, security, and intelligence issues declined precipitously. That's to say the least. In fact, presently, many key national security correspondents at The Guardian have little background in the field. Not a surprise. The U.S. did not or could not identify any victims. And we knew this always was the case. But it's nice to have it officially in writing. The U.S. government was unwilling or unable to identify any victim of the published leaks. And prosecutors did not request that Assange pay restitution for any alleged harm. However, during a press briefing on June 26, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, Count Smugula, maintained that there were victims.
If you recall, when WikiLeaks first disseminated and published State Department information cables, they did so without redacting names.
Except that wasn't them, asshole. That was Cryptome.
Yep. Yeah.
He says they just threw them out there for all the world to see. And so the documents they published gave identifying information of individuals who were in contact with the State Department. That included opposition leaders, human rights activists around the world whose positions were put in some danger because of their public disclosure. Well, those of you who covered the State Department at the time will probably remember that in the days leading up to that release, the State Department really had to scramble to get people out of danger, to move them out of harm's way. Bullshit! He offered to sit down and have a conversation with Hillary Clinton about it, and she stonewalled him. That's nonsense. He even offered to delay the release if that's what they needed. They never responded. This is all fucking fiction. Miller was not at the State Department. He was working at the time as a Justice Department spokesman in President Barack Obama's administration. And in fact, Miller opposed the Assange prosecution before he was an official in President Joe Biden's administration. You fucking hypocrite. Count Smugula. The entire cache of 250,000 plus diplomatic cables became available on the internet because Guardian editor David Lee included the passphrase for an encrypted file containing the cables in a book he co-authored about working with WikiLeaks. Assange called the State Department to warn them of the risks posed by the publication of unredacted cables. This is what I'm saying. Julian tried to work with them. I appreciate that you've recognized that these kinds of releases absolutely can pose a threat to the very sources reflected in the material, said Cliff Johnson. Miller complained about the supposed negative impact that the release of the cables had on U.S. diplomacy, but Secretary of Defense Robert Gates said when the cables were first published, quote, "I've heard the impact of these releases on our foreign policy described as a meltdown, as a game changer, and so on, and I think those descriptions are fairly significantly overwrought."
Uh-huh.
Yes, Kit Clarenberg is back on Twitter, by the way. And we covered that.
Yeah.
The fact is, governments deal with the United States because it's in their interest, not because they like us, not because they trust us, and not because they believe we can keep secrets. He also said every other government in the world knows the United States government leaks like a sieve, and it has for a long time. Associated Press reporter Matthew Lee, who was one of the only decent reporters in the White House press room, along with Simon Atiba, was covering the State Department when WikiLeaks first published the cables. As he recalled, quote, "There was no public concern that was raised about the potential security risks posed to sources who might have been quoted." Aside from the cables, the U.S. military was never able to find any evidence that the publications of military war logs from Iraq and Afghanistan resulted in any person's death. Again, that's an important phrase. The U.S. military was never able to find any evidence that the publications of military war logs from Iraq and Afghanistan resulted in any person's death. Pentagon Papers whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg testified at Assange's hearing in September 2020. He noted that Assange withheld 15,000 files from the release of the Afghanistan war logs. He also requested assistance from the State Department and Defense Department on redacting names, but they refused to help WikiLeaks redact a single document, even though it's a standard journalistic practice to consult officials to minimize harm, which he did. He says, Ellsberg says, "I have no doubt that Julian would have removed those names. Both the Pentagon and State Department could have helped WikiLeaks remove the names of individuals. Rather than take steps to protect individuals, Ellsberg suggested U.S. officials chose to preserve the possibility of charging Mr. Assange with precisely the charges that he faced." And of course, we know that Julian stated in court that he committed journalism. The U.S. government may have accepted a plea deal that showed Assange some mercy, but they still coerced or forced the WikiLeaks founder to plead guilty to journalism if he wanted to obtain his freedom. At the court hearing in Saipan, Judge Manglonia asked Assange to describe what he did that constituted the crime charged. I was working as a journalist, he says, and I don't know if you have this audio. I did not bring it up, but he says, working as a journalist, I encouraged my source to provide information. It's right there, I
think.
Is it?
The video.
Oh.
You click that.
At this time, I'm asking you to explain to me what is it that you did
That's
that
the
would
judge.
constitute the crime charged.
Working as a journalist, I encouraged my source to provide information that was said to be classified in order to publish that information. I believe that the First Amendment protected that activity, but I accept that as written, it's a violation of the Espionage Act statute.
So you had certain belief, but you understand what the law actually says as well.
I believe the First Amendment and the Espionage Act are in contradiction with each other, but I accept that that it would be difficult to win such a case given all the circumstances.
So,
Let me do it for you. Let me do it for you.
why am I hearing Miss Piggy?
Do it for you.
Because he did it for us.
Oh.
What?
Essentially, Assange recalled an act that reporters at numerous media outlets commit